Thank you. Maybe a little water here. See this? That's what happens. I was going to set this to tell me 20 minutes. Speak up. Can you hear me now? I'm going to read from the two books that I brought, since that's the fish I'm selling, as they would say, and a few poems, and then some newer poems, or if not new, at least still being worked on, and since these two books were published, or the last book was finished. So from the invention of honey, I'm going to begin with a poem called Francis's Barn. Lonnie Waples, a neighbor, owns the barn, but with husband dead and the livestock gone, her farm is up for sale. The barn is his for use in winter. The whole of winter he keeps the herd inside, each held in place by a metal yoke. Disturbed by voices, barn swallows fly zigzags about the nave. Nave? Shafts of light on plaster walls, rows of stalls like narrow private pews. Francis tells us of lightning, how when it strikes the barn, the current moves to the yokes, dropping the herd stunned to their knees. And once, when he himself was struck, how the bucket flew from his hand and a column of milk rose in the air. This poem, this book I reviewed, is my first book. Somebody reviewed it and said, Ricardo revisits his Lithuanian childhood. My full name is Ricardo da Silveira Lobo O'Reilly Sternberg, so I'm a lot of things, but I'm not Lithuanian. This was my landlord in Los Angeles, and part of it is true, where I'm going to UCLA, he says, oh, the Americans have published a map no longer showing Lithuania as disputed territory. And he was practically crying. But I only managed to write this poem many, many years later, and in part because I gave this guy a son who speaks the poem, and I think it was a bit teaching at U of T and my students the distance that they felt with their parents. That, the parents still wanted them to do folk dancing. One of them said, I went to Portugal. None of my cousins are doing this. They're listening to rock and roll. Blah, blah, blah. So this kind of distance that might appear. It's called A Pelican in the Wilderness. The NKVD is an early version of the KGB. The two occupations, Lithuania was the German and then the Russian. And at one point I talk about a biblical non sequitur. And so they had to avoid the censorship. So they would say, things are just wonderful, everything is, we love life here. And then this non sequitur, which is a pretty dreary song, but they say, that's our favorite song. So with that, I think when the woman with the Mappa Mundi tattooed on her behind said, boys, the world is yours for the taking, I for one remained a skeptic. The rich got to the table first, and once done, started on seconds. The rest wait their turn, blue with hunger, sucking on empty spoons. 2 occupations broke my father, and I don't mean jobs. Then he fled to the promised land, bruised and burdened with an immigrant's heart. He lives in America for Christ, work, the bottle, sits on the sofa half plastered, Sunday mass on the tube in a vernacular only half understood. Once I walked into the room and saw the old man kneeling on the carpet. He bowed his head to a flickering on the screen and then keeled over. Every month, the old geezers gather to lick wounds from skirmishes no history book will ever register. After a joint, sometimes I join the intelligentsia of the old country, sweating in the grease shops of Oakland, alongside blacks and Chicanos they too quickly learn to hate. Before the night is done, as if on cue, they will raise a silent toast to Petrus's letter framed on the wall. Written before he was neutralized by the NKVD, it brims with cheery news, but ends with this little particularly like Psalm 102. You might call it their drinking song. I am like the pelican in the wilderness. I am like an owl in the desert. My days are like a shadow that declineth, and I'm withered like grass. I remember the morning he came into my room. I knew something was wrong. Today is sad day of shame. The Americans have published a map no longer showing our beloved Lithuania as disputed territory. And then he wept. Our beloved Lithuania? It means nothing to me except some names, photographs, and a territory staked in his memory that stands between us and which I cannot traverse. That drunken woman offering us her bum, what else has history done this century? Ars longa vita brevis. The art is long, life is short. Sitting upright at his desk, primed to begin work right after this careful twirling of the pencil, round and round the sharpener, being oh so careful not to break the unfurling wooden banner, he brings up to his nose to see if it smells of hewn cedar, and it doesn't. But just you look, see the lovely strip he managed to make, but not to measure, since it breaks, and by now a plastic ruler in his hands, what exactly he meant to write has disappeared into the ether. So he goes downstairs and looks inside the cramped refrigerator, where the carton of milk declares itself way past its expiry date, which leads to an inspection of all containers. In such matters, best to be absolutely thorough, and what a mixed call it yields. Yogurt, cottage cheese, and ricotta, but the jar of maraschino cherries takes the prize for best before, with a date all of 5 years ago. In an open can, the tomatoes are covered with vellum, the artichokes are about to expire. Time then to look for the recipe his brother mailed him, calling for artichoke hearts, pimento mushrooms, green onions, and the zest of lemons, which will afford him another go at a long lemon rind banner. But the soft and wildly sprouting potatoes should be thrown out. And what about that Idaho senator looking, they say, for hanky-panky at the airport's bathroom? And surely CNN could be edifying. But this Dalai Lama of procrastination, as he was once called by someone who knew the discipline it takes to kill time, sees Topples, the cat, staring unflinchingly at him, who on the first of her 9 lives has all the time in this world. And what could a cat ever know about the state of a man's soul? But perhaps all she means is my water needs freshening. And as he pours, he notices the frazzled basil on the sill, but also due to some moisture. But this man should get back to work. And walking up the creaky stairs, he looks at his watch, sees it's already 4:30, so best he take a little nap before his wife comes home. Best, in short, he call it a day. They're not, some are not very, very new, but they're all after these books, of course. This is that last one. This is called Indio, which is a town in California, in the desert. I think it's enough for I'll bring the kickoff. Indio. Pockmarked though she be, she's still the queen of the boom boom room, a neon palace on the corner of desert with blue skies, just outside of Indio, California. Bellies to the bar, the grizzled boys would weep when she cried out, "Cry me a river." Whether from the broke in her voice, or just that miraculous river, its sudden flow through their parched lives, is anyone's guess. Amigo, you could say that booze and weed muddled their brains, made them easy targets for the bitter brag of that mournful song. But you'd be missing the pool of the moon, how it chokes them with grief, then drowns them with light. This is a dreary little poem, I won't read. I'm well known among my friends for my love of winter, snow, cold weather, Richard, I played ice hockey with Richard all the time in my dreams. It's called The Brazilian Considers Winter. If you only knew the exact cost of not leaving on cue, that first hint of frost, of failing to not only leave the wet, damp city, but to feel free to pack it up, decamp, to head south, to a tropical clime, heard of by word of mouth, and stay gone a long time. Was there no profit to shoot him on his way? For what could it profit this man if he cannot allay the ache in his back or his frozen heart? It appears he lost track of the seasons. Best start again. Surely somewhere, someone, somehow, must know the appropriate prayer to rebuke God for all this snow. This is mother-in-law. She said she often got a whiff of the goatish stench of Beelzebub whenever the hussy entered the room. That she feared for her poor son, dreading the thought of children, afraid they would arrive with tail, club, and hooves, and that awful stink, and that she took to taking along a vial of lucky holy water, and for extra protection, dropped the filigreed crucifix at her chest for the heft of a bronze cross that gave her a splitting headache and now a permanent stoop. This is of the more recent poems. And I was very sorry, I was at the Denfort the other day, and the shop where Mariante sold things is closed. I don't know what happened to her. I basically fell in love with her name. I saw her license to prepare food, Mariante, and when I said Mary, I said, no, I don't hate Mary. And she, anyway, most of it is not true in this poem. Only the first stanza is more or less true, the rest goes off. Mariante. Yes, she left home years ago to grow old here behind the counter, serving heroes and souvlaki's, hearing all day long the cocky banter of the boys and the men. But each night sleep sends her back to an island where she becomes sweet miracle of dreams, that girl awakened by the sounds of a village on the verge of dawn. Roosters trying to rouse the sun, a donkey braying from the field, and Hector, a horse, clopping steadily up the steep hill, bringing to those still asleep the rattle of canisters, their fresh milk. Small poems, short, some words. Surely poets all agree, made flesh, that word is one tough act to follow, and yet they keep on trying, word to word, sinew to grammar, strangling the melody just enough to evade rote eloquence, making pleasure great against the grain of the argument, grafting in a sort of stutter that undercuts certainty. The throat should barely pay purchase. A certain magnetic syllabic aura, a spell if you prefer, is the effect desired, and tuts, the rest is just literature. Monsieur ponders Madame. He never knew what would come next. Her every move left him perplexed as to the nature of a game whose rules never remained the same, but morphed according to her mood. Was she exalted or subdued? He carefully weighed the cons and pros, a pinch of poetry to his prose. He never knew who would arrive, so learned to quickly improvise and play the appropriate counterpart, but simply lacked her nimble heart. Give us, he prayed, our daily dread. He called her silver, she called him lead. So this is Sherbaz, Hogs. Some of you might know the poems that I refer to here. There's Ted Hughes has a poem called Hogs. Sylvia Plath, his wife, has a poem called Sow. And Philip Levine has a poem called Not This Day, which is also the title of his second book of reading. So Hogs. Hard at a glance to gauge whether the pig on this page could ever go toe to toe, be it in size or in weight, with that other pig, the one by Ted Hughes. Here's the pig in question, a slab of splayed flesh dropped to the straw snoring. That other pig is dead. A poundage of lard and pork, too dead even to prompt pity. Oppressed by all its weight, Hughes becomes all business. How could it be moved from the trouble to cut it up? Sylvia Plath penned the sound to the blank sty of her page. A grand dam of glorious bulk, read on the sly by a neighbor, impounded on public stairs, prize ribbons and awards, a farmer's shrewd secret kept hidden like a stolen painting. Startled by the sudden backfire of a tractor on the street, my pig opens a dream-dazed eye, exhales a long, steamy sigh, shakes both stall and barn as it prepares to stand delicately on sturdy trotters. The hint of a smile in its snout brings to mind yet another pig, this one by Philip Levine, driven to market by a boy and delighted to be on its way. It's wonderful, it says, how I jog, my massive buttocks slipping like oil parks with each step. How to explain such good cheer? Not ignorance of what awaits, since that's foreseen in chapter and verse. It smells the sour groove block, the blade that opens the hole, and the pudgy white fingers that shake out the intestines like a hanky. Is it acceptance? Or does it know something about fate averted, a sacrifice suspended, the timely reprieve? My pig drops its tonnage back on the straw and winks. A smile blooms on its snout, and as it falls asleep, it marvels. What an inexhaustible trough is this world of ours, whereat we feed and feed until that day we're fed to others. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lil. I would like to open my reading with a lengthy poem about language and the creative process. The words are helpless to resist the hand that shapes them from the mist of mental veils where nightingales serenade the, well, you get it. It was a mere 4,200 nights ago, to be precise, when I launched this book along with Lillian Netchikov's Bone Broker through Mansfield Press, Stuart Ross's editing. And it is, I'm a Boneshaker fan. I love the series. It's great to be back here and to be reading in a library. I feel like we're kind of under siege here, the current political climate. And it's really quietened down. Sorry, Ricardo, you read first, and I think you You had, this was the noisiest damn library I've ever been in. They have a bouncy castle there or something, but it's great to hear the kids, you know, the lively atmosphere as well, and people making the most of all the debuff. I told Dale, Dale always says that I talk more than I read at my reading. So we're gonna see if I can do that tonight. Then this is actually kind of a long piece. It's a modular poem called The Turbulated Curtain. But I will read it fast, and it'll be relatively painless.
And just a reminder, at 8 o'clock is going to be that weird announcement. Just so you
Yes, yeah, and there'll probably be an Amber Alert as well, so you're always on. And who knows what else? This is The Turbulated Curtain. From part 1, The Outside World. A languid lingual torrent coming out of my own head like textoplasm, full of typograms and lexicons. The day when a grainy velvet hum fell across the front lawn. Wolves seen only by children, seen only by ghosts, sauntered through the afternoon subdivision. Here comes another Ice Age flashback and a lost page from some fool's doctoral thesis about the use of prepared horseradish to treat esophageal dysfunction in razorback pigs. Veiny roots encased in clear ice, elsewheres of rocket ships and painted lips and gleaming ledgers, suntan oil and tarnished cigarettes, greasy mood fragments and sticky tortoiseshell spoon handles, dog syrup, all swirling now, all fermenting. Watch. Intangible fluff dripping from the fenders of abandoned dream cars in sunlit fields. Tendrils of blue sphagnum drop from the sky, spiraling downward with all the grace of a dyspeptic stockyard weasel shaver. This day was going to be special, and now it just seems like all the rest. A tin can rusting on a stump behind a shack inside the lobby of a Ludwig Mies van der Rohe bank tower populated by screaming armies of brokers and martial arts saleswomen. Since writing this, I've worked in that area. I've been in those buildings and I found that it's actually not like that at all. Still, we must make a go of it. There's a lot to be done and I can't waste my time writing about every little thing that happens. Soot-covered caverns, so soft to the touch, their snug arteries lead from the main gallery, whose pungent orange light graces our faces and the faces of the dogs too, all of which are scared shitless, though we ourselves are superbly tranquil. That tubular hallway over there loops around that other hallway, and I wouldn't be surprised if that loft-like aperture is somehow connected to them both. The sound of water from a distant stream, or near perhaps, is so muffled it sounds like cotton strands being pulled delicately through a wound. What kind of natural factory is this? Nature's always up to something, always manufacturing life forms and surfaces, and maybe this is beside the point, but I think we could float down that tunnel over there if we tried. It's just a feeling, but it's worth a shot. Say goodbye to our bosses, our ministers, our parole officers, and just float like a couple of dandelion puffs. I mean, we'll say goodbye to them in our heads, no need to go back to the parking lot. Then we'll drift weightless through the coiling soot tunnels of this inartificial place, this little transutopia, ready to screech in surprise at what we might find, or just twirl and sleep. A quiet day with dogs and skulking owls, tinkling fists of aluminum talismans dangling down the breakfast shafts, or enameled rosewood cubes not meant for touching. There are worlds of quiet majesty just beyond this reality, each one successively more horrifying. The last one is a galactic jack-in-the-box that erases...
May I have your attention, please? It is now 8 o'clock, and the library will close in 30 minutes. If you have items to sign out or need to register for a library card, please come to the checkout desk on the main floor now. The library will close in 30 minutes.
I've never been so affronted with this. No wonder they want to close these places down. It's so great if you get some peace and quiet, be able to listen to some nonsense for a while. But I hope you're paying attention anyway. So yes, as I was saying, the last one is a galactic jack-in-the-box that erases our memory with terror and sends us back to the start. Now it seems like I had this notion I was going to keep fame and curiosity. A man sits writing in a small booth, charmingly prattled with alabaster and mahogany. There's a blue tint to how stupid that seems. Years from now, he'll probably still be there, writing away like a buffoon about God knows what, frost or something, probably. There is frost on the glass statues of copulating humans in the courtyard of the litigation emporium. There is frost on the wings of dead bumblebees, and frost on the crotches of trees where messed up squirrels slumber haphazardly. On the windows of condemned infirmaries, frost. On the caps of dozing lobster fishermen vacationing in the interior, frost. There is even frost on the sawdust piled up outside the corner slaughterhouse. The frost is composed of an infectious pattern of tiny crystals, each bearing a microscopic schematic for a device that can turn crayfish shells into wallpaper. That's just a guess, but at least I'm trying to make sense of this ostensibly demented infestation of frozen translucence. Nature seldom acts without a purpose. We just have to look very closely to reveal its motives, to decipher its often peculiar gists. Farmers have always known this. That's why you'll sometimes see one bent over a wayward grouse with a hand mirror, or rubbing a cow's spittle between his coarse hands until it dries up, or, on rare occasions, catches fire. That's why they're friends with witches. And I will read some from part 2, The Golden Age of Noxious Dribble. What hope is in a drop of rain gliding down a woman's sternum? What hope is in a snowflake melting on a dead man's tattooed ankle? Science and mathematics alone cannot answer these questions. They must be married to philosophy and religion before a true analysis is possible. There are those who think the only way to close a door is by sliding on their belly across the floor until enough pressure is effected that the door becomes no longer open. Others think the opposite. But is either notion correct? If you put a dog in heat, does it become a scorpion? That would be like tying 2 chickens together and calling it a bell. It's not rocket surgery. All you need is a strong belief in something other than common sense. For example, the golden age of steam engines, or how to repair a spoon drawer. Sometimes it seems there's just no proper way to end a discourse. But when you feel that way, remember, the woods are full of chihuahuas. The grease from cocoons trickles down onto the tails of turkeys and the stubs of opera tickets. The pool of type dries up at the forward foot, might as well be front, doesn't it, of a small blue panther. The peculiar, it's all kind of, arbitrary. Just close your eyes and imagine the rest. The peculiar cat sniffles and longs to wonder what an understanding of words is all about. Intelligence without language is entirely possible, but there are so many ways to speak the world. A tree speaks it with its bark. A cloud speaks it with its lack of residuals. No one understands less poorly than I the equivocal necessity of silence. And now for the weather. A sustained blear cascading down the terrace glottal dales, overnight a probability of isolated mercurial contagions blossoming intermittently into patches of sustained libidinal envelopment. White-furred mammals are expected to occur identically across much of the southern frontier, heralding even more hysterical visions by midweek. Transpersonal delusions will be developing right before our eyes in the form of a crusty, appealing frost. Otherwise, the usual epidermal saturations, spinning reptile discs, and rashes of domestic over-fastidiousness can be expected until at least the weekend, when hedge nymphs with blow darts endeavor to retake the suburban matrix. Volunteer officers will again be patrolling the countryside in an attempt to break up any instance of wildlife population. Sticks and nets will be used, mace if necessary, little toothpicks and sticky rods for the fornicating insects, plumbing apparatus to shove down holes on hunches, laboratory-grown mucous membranes, terrier whips, whippet bats, bat radios, radio scarecrows, electronic lightning, vegetal molds, slingshot dildos, parakeet hammers, glass taffeta feathers, onion blood keys, vellum sacks, blue hot water bottles, wood chips. We'll have a full report on that after this week's episode of The Elegant Spirals of Slime Mold Amoebas. Archaic revival time begins tonight, so remember to set your clocks back 18,000 years. The sun is expected to rise in the east tomorrow, but it will sink in the west, contrary to our earlier report. And those little feathery things flying around through the air that everybody's been so concerned about, don't be alarmed. They're birds, a kind of airborne vertebrate descended from dinosaurs. Our network paleontologists say they're harmless unless seriously provoked, in which case they may attack the elderly, children, and single male office workers between the hours of 4 and 6 p.m. when they're most vulnerable. We'll return in one form or another after this message. A thin icy crust of snow cloaks the observatory. Fawns nibble tax receipts and candlesticks in the faux forest. They took out the heart. They were all ready to transplant it, and they forgot completely what they were doing. Not just how to do it, but they didn't even have a clue suddenly who they were, or as stated previously, what they were doing. Remarkably, the patient from whom the heart had been taken lived, while the would-be recipient, not surprisingly, did not. And now a word from our sponsor. At the Sorbonne that Tristan Zara was giving them later in their lives. He's kind of stood at the back, scoffing at everything Zara was saying, and then at one point, he was so insulted by something, he walked up to the podium and took Zara's glass of water and drank it right down, and like that was the best insult. But please don't take it that way. Well, a word from our sponsor. You'll certainly look a terror in this horrible new spherical side-wandered snake missile jacket display, so that makes the same snap you get when a door closes unexpectedly on your principal divestitures. There are motherless flags, there are insensate tensile stenciles, the list goes on, but best of all, there are timeless elegances. Each box of piffle has a little piece of timeless elegance taped discreetly to the inside of its hindquarters. Your friends will never know the difference. There are plenty of cracks in the squall that go all the way down to the gray stone bridge with twinkling crescents. An aura of fog dogs the hogs as they clamber over the arch, looking for bells they've been taught to seek. Meanwhile, you or someone representing you undergo brooding crenellations while I read from Coleridge in the corner. It's nothing new, I just haven't mentioned it till now. My ego has dispersed too soon. I have nothing with which to replace it, hence the vacuity of these lines. She really gets my donkeys up on stage. I love the way she plays with their expectations.